All right.
Mr. Chairman, can you allow Dick to vote?
If you open the vote again, we have one member who didn't get in. Stand up and turn around and let the folks see you. And Scarlett Rainey from Brunswick County. Thank y'all. The first bill we are going to hear is House Bill 1277. Delegate Garrett. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. You all have heard part of this with Senator Hanger's legislation. This is what I commonly and fondly refer to as the clipboard bill. This is work I've been concerned about in 20 years, long before I was a politician. As a doctor, you go see a doctor, they give you the clipboard, you fill out your name, your social security number, and your address, and your health insurance information. You get referred to another doctor, they give you their clipboard, and you fill out the exact same information time and time and time again. And Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, we do that all the time, every day, in all our different agencies. What my bill embraces or considers is, I'm sorry? Yeah, absolutely. Yes, sir. Embraces is breaking down some of those silos amongst all our various different agencies such that for a proper purpose with security and for reasons that will help promote efficiencies, but as well make sure when folks are seeking services, they get all the compendium of services that they need. We'll do that. With Senator Hanger's bill, you actually incorporated 3 other bills. Senator Barker, you had the issue with the bill to create the Chief Data Officer with the Commonwealth from the Secretary of Technology. I believe Senator Donovan had a bill to create the Data Governance Advisory Committee, and so who else had? Someone? Yes, had a bill as well to, Senator Edwards had the bill to encourage the opioid use amongst that. You all incorporate all 4 of those into this one bill. My preference is to keep 2 vehicles going forward. I think it's in both of our budgets, the funding for the Chief Data Officer, but there's enough fluidity out there. I think there's very much a common purpose or common interest in having legislation that I introduced being part of that. So.
Any questions of the patron? Is anyone here in opposition to House Bill 1277? Hearing none. Properly moved and seconded that House Bill 1277 be reported. Any further conversation? If not, to record your votes. That bill is reported.
I thank the chairman and the committee.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Delegate Torian. Delegate Stolley. Okay. Let's see. Delegate Bell. Welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, this bill is House Bill 97, and we actually have an amendment, and I knew Senator McPike had that. I don't know if he left it with someone, substitute and form amendment. Yep.
Properly moved and seconded, we adopt the substitute. All in favor say aye. Aye. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, this bill does 2 pretty simple things. One on the both technical adjustments in the procurement area. One, it raises the small purchase limit for professional services from $60,000 to $80,000, and then it also increases the amount for A&E, architectural engineering services, annual term contract limit from $500,000 to $750,000. These haven't been increased, these limits, since 2001. And basically what this will do is it'll add some government efficiency by making sure we're not spending the money to go through these procedures for smaller dollar contracts, more appropriately put them with where we should be. It'll also basically just frankly eliminate the amount of government involvement in business on these smaller dollar contracts. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Because the substitute has language that was not in the bill prior, you want to address that piece of it a little closer?
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman. Both of these, the substitute was actually going to originally be in House Bill 647, and I'd actually worked with Delegate Chris Peace on this, and frankly, we had a communication mishap. He thought I was going to put it in, and I thought he was going to put it in, and unfortunately came out of the House with neither one of us addressing it. So we wanted to go ahead and address it here. There is no opposition to either of these changes, so that's why we're asking if we could address it here, since, again, it's just a dollar amount, and frankly, it will help the business community and the government by doing this.
Okay. All right, any questions? Is there anyone here in opposition to the substitute for House Bill 97?
Second.
Properly moved and seconded that House Bill 97 be reported. Any further conversation? Hearing none, record your votes.
Ayes 14, noes 1, 1 abstention.
Okay. All right. Delegate Toscano,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I have 1262. The origin of this bill came to me from a gentleman who works with the Piedmont Virginia Community College's Job Works program. And what they were doing is they were locating people to get jobs, and they were placing people in jobs, and then they were finding difficulty in those people being able to get to and from jobs. They didn't have transportation. So they came up with this unique idea of creating this pool of vehicles that they would own through the Community College Foundation, and they would essentially allow those vehicles to be used by the people getting to and from jobs until they had all their transportation set up. Then they'd rotate the vehicle through and make it available to another person. And as a result, they came up with this idea, which I thought was pretty unique, that would allow General Services, Department of General Services, to dispose of surplus motor vehicles by essentially giving those surplus motor vehicles to these foundations which exist around the Commonwealth, the Virginia Community College Educational Foundations that are tax exempt. And in that way, they can make more vehicles available to people to get to and from work. I had somebody coming from Charlottesville today, I don't think they got here yet, to testify for the bill.
Well,
But
let's see if there's any opposition first. Is there anyone here in opposition to House Bill 1262? Hearing none. Any questions of the patron? Is there a motion?
Second.
Properly moved and seconded, House Bill 1262 be reported. Any further conversation? Okay. Yeah. All right. Senator DeStaff.
Mr. Chair, I had a quick question of the patron. Delegate Toscano, where do the funds go today?
The funds, there aren't funds. The cars are donated to the Community College Foundation, so there are no funds involved.
But the sale of the vehicles today?
The sale of the vehicle?
Yes, because
Oh, where does General Services, what do they do with the?
Correct,
Yeah, I don't
correct.
really know. I think they auction them off, or I really don't know where they go.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, one additional follow-up question.
Certainly.
I believe they go to auction now. There's a
Right.
couple of companies who, basically buy these in block and guarantee the state so much money for the GSA vehicles. I think a lot of localities do the same thing. They contract with somebody who will sell them off.
Right.
But I was just curious to find out where the funds go today for that. I mean, I'd hate to be taking it out of an important, well-needed area and putting it into, and I'm not saying that this is a bad thing or not, but I'd like to make sure if we're taking funds out of an account, we know what we're taking it out of before we put it back in another account, Mr. Chairman. So I don't want to just put the brakes on this, but I'd like to at least get some details on that.
Is there anyone here from General Services that might want to address this? Senator Barker.
I'd make a motion to, a substitute motion to report and re-refer to finance. And we're
Speaking of the
ready to
motion,
Well, hold on just a minute on the motions. Is there anyone here from General Services? Okay, all right. Senator Eben, what was your question?
I was just going to note that there was no fiscal impact.
And on the fiscal impact statement, it explains that the Virginia Community College Foundation is not a state agency, if I read this right. The foundations are not state entities, so it doesn't impact the state budget. It's just
I
Chairman,
think-
if I may.
I think you're incorrect in the point that Senator DeStefft is correct. The money that's received through those auctions goes somewhere. It probably comes to the general fund, but Finance Committee is requesting it, and so.
Oh, I'm sorry, I
only
didn't-
proper
I didn't see
motion
that part.
is
Okay.
Senator Barker's. All right, any further conversation? Hearing none. The motion is to pass and re-refer House Bill 1262. All in favor? Okay.
Thank you.
Kirk, you want to report it, or you want me to?
Ayes 13, noes 2.
All right. Okay. Delegate Hidd, Delegate Stolle, Delegate Knight, Delegate Leftwich.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, members
Welcome.
of the committee. This is my glasses.
House Bill 741.
Yes, sir. So this bill, what this bill would do is the Department of Human Rights conducts limited investigations at time regarding complaints of discrimination. And what this bill would do is say that those findings would not be admissible in court. Okay, and so when they do these investigations, there are no hearings. All they do is exchange essentially what we call paperwork, and then it wouldn't preclude someone from calling witnesses and introducing evidence at trial, but the findings of, the internal findings would not be per se admissible. This is the way the Employment Commission operates. So findings of the Employment Commission are not automatically admissible as a government document in a trial or whatnot. And so if there was something, a suit filed, a complaint or something like that, then you would have to call witnesses and prove the facts just like you would in any other matter. In the investigation, there's no opportunity for an individual to be cross-examined or ask questions or to verify the integrity of the information. So that's what the bill does.
Mr. Chairman, I mean no harm to the delegate, but we have one, I think, date left for courts of justice. I don't think this is the right committee to hear the bill. So I'd make the motion to re-refer to the Committee on Courts.
Hold that thought for a minute. Amigo, would you address that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It does relate to possible causes of action, but it's something that's certainly within subtitle 2.2. It's really the pleasure of the committee.
Okay. All right, the motion is that it be re-referred to the courts of justice. Any further conversation? Hear none. Record your votes. All right, close the roll.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's better than the alternative.
Ayes 11, noes 3.
All right, thank you. Delegate Torian.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Welcome.
Mr. Chairman and committee, House Bill 1047 amends the definition of the Manufacturers Home Lot Rental Act. House Bill 1047 simply reduces from 10 to 5 the number of manufactured homes required on a parcel of land under the single or common ownership for purposes of being subject to the Manufacturers Home Lot Rental Act. This bill receives the support of the Virginia Manufacturers and Modular Home Association and the Virginia Poverty Law Center. That's the bill.
This bill is similar to Senate Bill 194. Amigo, can you tell us the difference?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The similarity is just in the Senator Locke's bill, which did a lot more. This was a small piece of what was in Senate Bill 194, which also rolled in Senator McPike's Senate Bill 648. It's my understanding that this provision was not in contention.
Okay. Is there anyone here in opposition to House Bill 1047? Hearing none. Is there a motion? Properly moved and seconded to be reported. Any further conversation? Hearing none. Record your votes.
Ayes 12, noes 3.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Hid Stolly Knight. Stolly, oh, there you are. All right. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is House Bill 345. This is similar to Senator Lewis's Senate Bill 265. It creates a cabinet-level position that will act as a single point of contact for coordinating efforts for coastal adaptation. In addition to economic development, the position is responsible for developing a statewide coastal adaptation strategy, advancing academic expertise at the Commonwealth Center for Recurrent Flooding and Resiliency, coordinating with the Virginia Growth and Opportunity Board, and working with federal agencies to safeguard strategic national assets threatened by coastal flooding.
Okay. This bill will have to go to finance, but Amigo, can you tell us the difference between this one and Senator Lewis's SB 265?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The only difference is that Senator Lewis's bill has the second enactment clause that refers to that the act will not become effective unless there's an appropriation.
Okay. Which the Finance Committee has the opportunity to put that on. Is there anyone here in opposition to House Bill 345? Hearing none. Is there a motion? Properly moved and seconded House Bill 345 be reported and re-referred to Finance. Any further conversation? Hearing none. Record your votes. Okay, close the roll.
Ayes 13, noes 2.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Delegate Knight.
Yes, sir. I believe I have an amendment in nature of a substitute.
I give up, do you?
I'm going to asking him.
The motion is to adopt the substitute. All in favor say aye. All opposed? Okay. The substitute is before us, all right?
Mr. Chairman, what this does is, you remember we had a short-term rental situation, and this body put in code 15.2-983 that said on short-term rentals, the localities could ask to register, remit certain taxes, and have a $500 penalty fee for not registering. Well, then the city of Lexington, we believe, went way above and beyond that. So basically what we're doing is we're saying this is what the General Assembly says you're allowed to do. We are a Dillon Rule state. You do not overstep your bounds unless you come back to us and ask for authority. And what the amendment in the nature of a substitute does is it adds the city of Virginia Beach in there, because Virginia Beach is considering requiring a conditional use permit for short-term rentals. That's clearly not in the code. And I've got I think Mr. Dix is here, that if we have any, that's the broad overview, but if you have any real specific questions, he can help us answer them, sir.
Okay. Welcome if you want.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Chip Dix on behalf of the Virginia Realtors, and this substitute, as Delegate Knight presents, primarily deals with the city of Lexington, and the city manager is here. We've been working between the city of Lexington and the Virginia Realtors and other stakeholders to come up with consensus language. The language on lines 9 through line 36 is consensus language with the city of Lexington. The city manager's here. There was one last thing that we negotiated over the weekend, and that was dealing with occupancy schedules, and we were concerned that the short-term rentals would be treated so that they would only be perhaps one person allowed in short-term rental per bedroom, whereas generally it's 2 persons per bedroom and other owner-occupieds and long-term rentals. But we've had a discussion with the city manager and some of the council members, and we think we have an understanding that they're going to look at that going forward and that if anything, they might increase the occupancy from the current level of 6 in their ordinance, particularly for 4 and 5 bedroom homes that are being used as short-term rentals. And so with that, what I'd like to do, Mr. Chairman, is I'd like to ask the City of Lexington City Manager to speak to that briefly, if I could.
Okay. Welcome.
Good afternoon. First of all, thank you for your time. Thank you for what you do. We hope that you all come down and visit us in Lexington. But in terms of the bill that's before you, we've worked all weekend with Mr. Dix and Delegate Knight, and assuming, I haven't gone through it word for word, but assuming that it is the same version that we looked at over the weekend, we do not oppose that bill. And in terms of the occupancy, I don't think there's a desire by council to reduce that occupancy to anything less than 6. They may look at it in the future in terms of increasing that based on the number of bedrooms and the size of the homes, but I don't think there's a desire to decrease it to less than 6. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I would represent to the committee and to Mr. Simon that the language in the substitute with respect to the lines I previously referenced is identical to the language that he and I and the city attorney and other city officials worked on over the weekend.
Okay, thank you. Is anyone here in opposition to House Bill 824? Welcome.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Bob Mathias, I feel obligated to at least address this. The council has not acted. They have 3 options on the table in front of them. But I know the council is also always willing to comply with the law as laid out by the General Assembly.
Thank you. All right. Any questions?
Mr. Chairman?
Senator Evans.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to make sure I understand I got it right. So they were, Delegate, you were saying that you thought the city was perhaps overstepping their bounds in terms of over-regulating?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Overregulating by charging business licenses, transient occupancy taxes, some other numerous fees. They had 45 days in there where the code said 30 days.
For the length of how long? 45 days for which portion?
Mr. Chairman, I could assist Senator Evan on the city had adopted an ordinance that defined short-term rentals as 45 days or less. The state code 15.2983 from last year defined short-term rentals as less than 30 days. And so the city has agreed to come into compliance with the less than 30 days that was set out in the code last year.
Okay. And then, sir, if I might have one final question for the council, for Amigo. I would just ask Mr. Wade if this basically doesn't regulate this community any more or less than any other under our current code.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that the objective of the legislation is to have the locality comply with the statute that was passed last year.
Senator Steph.
Mr. Chairman, if I can, I'm just going to speak to the portion on Virginia Beach and what it takes to get a conditional use permit if one were required to the enactment clause number 3. And basically, it's almost $1,000 per unit. Property owner has to go through planning commission to seek permission, which takes almost 6 months. Then there are literally thousands and thousands of short-term rentals in Virginia Beach. So this would be very expensive and very onerous for anyone who wishes to use Airbnb. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, I was chairman of the Virginia Beach Planning Commission for years and years until I got a better gig.
Pays a lot more. No. Any further questions? Is there a motion?
Second.
Properly moved and seconded that House Bill 824 be reported.
Mr. Chairman.
Somewhere. Yes, Senator McBite.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is not a question, patron, but a comment on the motion itself. We went down this policy path last year. I didn't necessarily agree with some of that path, and I have the feeling that we'll be continuing to have these sort of bills. I'm going to support the bill, to no harm to the patron, and this is, obviously he's trying to address a policy issue that is coming up, but we had an opportunity as a legislative body to deal with a much broader set of issues that would have avoided these, and I have a feeling we're going to see these back year after year as a Christmas tree and adding on a new city or new county or new issue every single year unless we deal with the underlying policy issues from a statewide perspective that addresses emerging issues in our economy like this. And I will support the bill this year. However, next year might be a different issue.
Thank you. If we didn't have Christmas trees, we might be able to go back to every other year sessions. Any further conversation? The motion is to report. All in favor, record your votes.
Ayes 15, no 0.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
Okay. Delegate Head, Delegate Davis, Delegate Ware. Oh, all right. You better jump up if you want to.
Mine will be quick.
All right, you're next then. Delegate Ware.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There is a technical amendment that I believe your council has on House Bill 1453.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's actually going to be 3 technical amendments, and what the amendments do is the new language that's found on page 2 at lines 74 through 81. I think that the intent was for that language to go in the chapter that regulates real estate appraisers, and it's currently in the chapter that regulates real estate agents and brokers. So the 3 amendments will basically move that language to the real estate appraiser chapter. And the first one is on line 4. After numbered, you would strike 54.1, 2101.2, and insert 54.1, 2017.1. The second amendment is on line 11. After numbered, you would strike 54.1-2101.2 and insert 54.1-2017.1. And the last amendment is on page 74. After section, you would strike 54.1, 2101.2 and insert 54.1-2017.1.
Everybody got that? Properly moved and second that those amendments be adopted. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to confirm that we're actually talking about line 74, not page 74 on this one. Got it. Thank you.
All right, those amendments are adopted. All right.
I think he explained the whole thing. We're all set to go. No, seriously,
maybe you could fill us in a little bit more.
Yeah, this is a cleanup from last year. You may recall we added in the code evaluations as well as appraisals as a possibility. The one thing we omitted was to put a definition that distinguishes an evaluation from an appraisal, which is used in those somewhat lesser circumstances where that's an appropriate alternative. This merely adds a definition for evaluation.
Any questions of the patron? Is there anyone here in opposition to House Bill 1453? Hearing none. Is there a motion? Properly moved and seconded that House Bill 1453 be reported. Any further conversation? Hearing none. Record your votes.
Ayes 15, no 0.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members.
All right. Delegate Davis, House Bill 375.
Mr. Chairman, House Bill 375, you've seen a variation of this in front of you before. It's the wage floor bill. What this does is it prevents localities from mandating that a certain level of wages and benefits be paid to employees by a business just to win a local government contract. Mr. Chairman, it keeps the cost of local government projects down and keeps the free market going, and I hope it's the pleasure of this body to move it forward.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions of the patron? Is there anyone here in opposition to House Bill 375? Welcome.
Oh, sorry, Zach. It's just a bill at this point. Nah.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Brian Ball speaking on behalf of the administration, Deputy Secretary of Commerce and Trade, and the administration strongly opposes this bill. This bill would take away from the localities the option of doing their own contracting or doing what they think's best in their localities. So for that reason, the administration strongly opposes the bill. And I have someone from local government that can speak to this if you'd like to hear from them, but I think I've probably captured the sentiment of the.
Well, I suspect that if he strongly feels that way, he probably will not let it be signed.
I think that's probably a pretty,
All right.
that's pretty good.
Senator Abbott.
If I could just ask the delegate, if I was a local government, say they have a choice, they could either employ custodial help and they want to make sure they're paid enough to perhaps live somewhere near the locality itself, or people who drive the snow plows or whatever, not snow plows, clear the local sidewalks, local ones, and they want to pay them a certain wage to see that it's a living wage or barely a living wage, or a wage that they might be able to live nearby. And they have a choice between that, or they could contract out those same services. If they can they not? Why shouldn't they be able to require that people get paid a reasonable amount?
Well, I will tell you, first off, there's a fallacy that prevailing wage laws get local people hired. Actually, what the studies show, going back to Davis-Bacon at the federal level, is prevailing wage laws allowed outside contractors to compete against local small businesses. That's why Davis-Bacon was first enacted back at the federal level, and that's what people see at the prevailing wage level in local government is the local small businesses don't have as much of an expense since they're already in the area, and when you increase the cost of the minimum level of a project, more outside contractors are able to compete. So I agree with you in concept. Unfortunately, these laws do just the opposite.
Complete your question.
That's my question.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator McPike.
Question for the patron. This body and the House each year provide provisions of appropriations to folks like Newport News Shipbuilding and others that I believe include this exact language of prevailing wages. Do you support those measures as well?
The only reason, Mr. Chairman, that that language is included is any funds that we give in conjunction with federal funds requires us to adhere to Davis-Bacon wages, which I don't like them. I think they need to go away, but it's the law of the land right now. So to the extent that they're in place at the federal level, we don't have a choice. I would say, though, to the gentleman that the reason why it's our prerogative up here to put this type of legislation in place is I served 5 years in local government before I came here, and I don't like telling local government what to do. However, we all understand that when it comes to projects, there's usually a cost share with large projects with the Commonwealth of Virginia. And that cost share is based upon the total cost of the project. So when a locality decides to artificially increase the price of a project, it requires us to give them more for their cost share, and there's less money that we can spend doing other projects around the Commonwealth. So I don't like the federal language that we're stuck with, but I do believe it hurts the Commonwealth and our ability to do more by adopting it unilaterally at the local level.
Any further questions? Is anyone here in support of House Bill 375? Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Rob Bohannon speaking on behalf of the Virginia Utility and Heavy Contractors Council, and we support the bill.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hi, Mr. Chairman. Keith Martin with Virginia Chamber of Commerce. We also support the bill.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? All right. The bill is before us. Any
Report.
properly moved and seconded that House Bill 375 be reported? Any further conversation? Hearing none. Record your votes.
Ayes 8, no 7.
Bill is reported. Thank you. You will also have another one, House Bill 398.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, a much easier bill. House Bill 398 just adds a sunset provision to a piece of legislation that was passed last year that accidentally did not have the sunset provision in it. All it was a bill that related to the bid bonds of contractors, and this puts a sunset provision on that piece of legislation of July 1st, 2021.
Is there anyone here in opposition to House Bill 398? Hearing none. Is there a motion? Properly moved and seconded that House Bill 398 be reported. Any further conversation? Hearing none. Record your votes.
Ayes 15, no 0.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Delegate Corey. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. I got it. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the committee. I have House Bill 1533, which is an amendment in the nature of a substitute. And before I present the bill, I have a question for staff. There was an amendment, a line amendment that was made in the committee in the House that I'm not sure made it in the printed version. It's limiting the bill to Planning District 8. Is that in there? It should be. The General Laws Committee in the House voted unanimously to include that. But like I say, it was verbal. We didn't have it in writing. Oh.
All right, are you requesting that that be
I
added?
am. Yes, sir,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I am requesting that. I'll make that motion.
Properly moved and seconded. Properly moved and seconded that amendment be added to the bill. All in favor say aye. All opposed? Okay, that is added to the bill. All right, you want to,
Thank
how
you.
much?
This will be quick.
Mr. Chairman?
All right, hold on one moment.
I'm sorry. Could we get a clarity from council on the amendment itself that was just adopted by the committee? I see there's already a House substitute
Yes.
that added the county executive form of government. Can Amigo opine as to the change?
I think that
Yes,
with
Mr.
that term, you could include Enrico. I think that was the,
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that was, the understanding that I had, it was that the urban, is that amendment was what was put on in the substitute. I was just checking to see if there was not I don't see where the planning district.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I'm one line amendment behind. So please allow the Fairfax County Authority to.
Sorry,
correct
Mr.
me.
Chairman. So I'm Claudia Arco with Fairfax County. The amendment that was adopted in the House was to limit it to urban county executive form of government. So that should be in there, not planning District 8.
Sorry.
Yes, that is
Thank
in
you.
there. And just to, just to answer Senator McPike, that's on line 25, not page 25, I think it's.
all right, the proper action
Thank
is we
you.
need to rescind the amendment we just added to it.
I move to reconsider the vote by which we adopted that amendment.
Properly moved and seconded that we remove that amendment or reconsider that vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. All right, now, we're back where we need to be, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, you
All right.
are. And again, I thank you for your patience. This bill, 1533, is, excuse me, a clarification of the Property Owners Association Act. It simply clarifies the fact that if an association's homeowners' deeds are largely similar from the time of purchase, that they are in fact under the Homeowners Act, even though the deeds are not word for word. And it is limited to an association that has 500 or more homes and is co-located with a watershed improvement district, and as you heard, has an urban executive county form of government.
I suspect you have some folks who'd like to speak to this.
There were, oh, I didn't realize that he snuck in. Please.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Bill Likos. I'm the president of the Lake Barcroft Association. By curious coincidence, we are a homeowners association located in Fairfax County with more than 500 lots in the same boundaries as a watershed improvement district, and I think that puts us in unique status in the Commonwealth. We are here today because the clarification we seek is to assure all of our homeowners that we are in fact covered by the Virginia Property Owners Act. We have been conducting our affairs in that manner for the last 15 plus years. However, recent changes in case law have brought that into some question because of the point Delegate Corey makes that while all 1,046 homes have substantially similar language in deed restrictions, they may not necessarily be word for word. And the fact that multiple declarations therefore could be deemed to exist, does cause us the heartburn of possibly not being being covered by the act. So we have come before you to ask to be covered by regulation that assures our residents of their rights, that defines the responsibilities of the homeowners association, and that makes it clear moving forward that we can continue to conduct our affairs as we have for the last 15 years.
Okay, thank you. When the companion bill of Senator Marsden's came through, the issue came up of constitutionality of changing the terms of those who came before. Senator Serval is not here at this time, so who wants to be the acting attorney here?
Mr. Chairman, I'm his proxy, so I got to say it's a great bill and move to report.
Could we see your diploma from law school?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not an attorney, but I play one on courts of justice, and I would just tell you that I think the challenge that we had the last time this bill was up was that the actual people in that specific neighborhood didn't have the opportunity to have a referendum to vote on whether or not they wanted to be part of this process to be governed this way. And I think that was part of the challenge was, and then the other part, Mr. Chairman, was the part that you just mentioned was we are substantially changing the contract law to which these individuals originally bought their property and were part of this organization, going back and wrapping that in. I specifically remember Senator Serval, that put a burr on your saddle. So if the members recall that was a long day.
If I may address those two questions. First of all, I'd like to thank Senator Reeves for the guidance of doing more to engage our community. Previous timing had not allowed that before we came over. However, fortuitously, we had our annual meeting of the community. Over 177 lots were represented, a couple hundred people attended. I addressed the issue to the community and there were no concerns or objections raised. There was another issue by one of the realtors who lived in the community who suggested that the uncertainty was very problematic because all the realtors conduct their disclosures under the Act. So if we were not so covered, then there may be some question as in the transactions of sales. Now, I recall the question about changing covenant law, and I will defer to our counsel, Andrew Elmore from Chadwick Moriarty. But as I recall, it was clearly stated that the Act states that it does not change any underlying deed restrictions or languages. So therefore, being covered by the Act accommodates all of the homeowners' existing deed restrictions.
Thank you.
Did I say that right, Counselor?
Close. Just a couple of things. Andrew Elmore, Mr. Chairman, again for Lake Barcroft Association. One of the things that's unique here is that they have 1,100 lots. There's not one declaration. Everybody has a deed restriction. So they don't have the luxury like a lot of older communities where they can go to an amendment provision of the declaration. They don't have it. They cannot avail themselves of the amendment provision under the Property Owners Act because they're not subject to the Act, or at least arguably not. So this is a way to solve that problem in a manner that is exactly what the General Assembly did in 1989 when it adopted the Virginia Property Owners Association Act, which retroactively became applicable to any development that satisfied the definitional requirements. Case law now arguably takes Lake Barcroft out of those definitional requirements. By adopting this bill, you're doing what the General Assembly did in 1989 for all of the existing associations at that time. Again, the Act will not contravene any existing provision, but with respect to matters in the deeds that are silent, it will be applicable. Thank you.
Before you run off, Senator Serval every year brings some kind of legislation that such as allowing daycare into homeowners onto the property of the homeowners association is covered. Is he going to be in there next year, in here next year, changing that?
He might. I won't speak for, I mean, I know by trade, he deals a lot with some association issues on behalf of owners, so perhaps. But it's my understanding he has thrown his support behind this bill.
Mr. Chairman. And that is accurate. He is supporting the bill by proxy and is marked down yes. And I think he has followed up with council after the last discussion, having some property experience in this very area, and supports the bill now.
I'm not surprised. It gives him more customers. Any further conversation? Is there a motion? Properly moved and seconded that House Bill 1533 be reported. All in favor, record your votes. The bill
Ayes
is
8, no
reported
7.
8 to 7. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am sorry it took so long.
That's all right. Okay. Delegate Hidd. Welcome.
Of House Bill 101.
Okay.
And this is a very simple measure that seeks to address an inequity between the Uniform Statewide Building Code and the licensing of the tradesmen. Tradesmen are required in maintaining their license to have continuing education credits. Right now, they are required to have those classes once every 2 years to keep them in sync with the code. But the problem is that the building code is updated every 3 years. And so every other time they go, they're out of phase. And so all we're trying to do with this bill is to put the continuing education requirements in sync with the updates to the code so that they don't have to take the same class that they've already taken. So.
Okay. Is there anyone here in opposition to House Bill 101?
Mr. Chairman, I move we report this fine bill.
Second. Properly moved and seconded that House Bill 101 be reported. Any further conversation?
Mr. Chairman?
Here, Senator McPike.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to slow down the train, but I did have a question to the patron. It's somewhat familiar with the UBC adoption as well as the Virginia Code, and my experience is oftentimes they're actually delayed. After initial adoption, there's actually a Virginia adoption of the code that aren't going to sync either way.
Mr. Chairman, that is absolutely correct. Sometimes they don't, but all the more reason to, I would say, to delay the continuing ed classes, which is why we've had DPOR has looked at this and is not here to oppose. So.
Does that complete your question?
Well, follow-up question, Mr. Chairman. I mean, what's at issue if, in fact, we know that the adoption of the UBC to the Virginia standard is actually sort of offset right now? What is there a complaint or other issue? Because they have to update based on the adoption, and that if the adoption is not in line, which is current practice today, I'm just trying to understand.
Honestly, Mr. Chairman, I mean, this was brought by constituents who just said, could we please make this every 3 years, because it just doesn't make any sense to have us be out of phase, and nobody ever suggested that we do it. Interestingly enough, there was a study that DPOR did that suggested that we might just remove the requirement altogether, because it doesn't appear to be doing much benefit at all, aside from just adding additional costs to the contractors. But at the very least, this would buy them back a day of their life once every other year. They'd only have to go once every 3 years instead of once every 2. So it would just, it spreads it out a little bit for them.
That complete your question? All right. The motion is to report the bill. Record your votes.
Ayes 11, noes 4.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Delegate confers Fowler. Apologies if I mispronounced it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. As we went back and forth with the stakeholders, we were striking through some of the new language on line 20. We inadvertently struck through some of the language that is already in existing code. So if it's the pleasure of the committee, I'd love for someone to move a minor amendment on line 20 to unstrike by audio or visual means, or just reinsert the language. Basically, lines 19 through 22 should be restored to their original form. And I've worked with
Mago, is it in, can you report how it should read?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. It would be on line 20 after meeting, you would reinsert by audio or visual means.
Properly moved and seconded that amendment be agreed to. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Now, tell us what your bill does.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This bill directly amends Virginia Code of Statement of Lot Owner Rights. As the code is currently written, lot owners have a right to cast their vote, but there is no provision that states that they shall be informed of the outcome. And although it seems to be a given that as a voting member you would be privy to the tally and outcome, usually the outcome is the only thing reported. Problems could arise when there is an election and a very close vote count. A homeowner that cast a ballot in the election should have the right to be informed of the vote count. So if Jill and Frank were running against each other in an HOA board, for an HOA board position, and Jill lost, all homeowners should have the right to know how much Frank won by. Maybe Frank got 300 votes and Jill got 299. Either way, the process should be transparent and clear, and there should be a recorded vote count and outcome conveyed. So this code only adds to line 19, that they're being informed of the vote count. So I hope to answer any questions. The CAI, they do support the bill, and we work together on it, and I appreciate your time. They're here to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions? Senator DeSteffe?
Mr. Chairman, you know, I'm trying to digest this, and I was working with one of her other senators on this who had some concerns. I've not had a chance to, I didn't know that we were going to have this amendment. I haven't had a chance to get back with him on this. So at this point, I'd like to take this by for the day so I can address this with him.
Mr. Chairman.
Hold on. Did you complete your remarks?
I'd like to take this by and discuss this further with him. My original concern was this, is we eliminated the right of the lot owner to record the proceedings, and I thought that was bad policy. Now that we're reinserting all of that language, I believe we're reinserting all that language. Is that correct?
We're just restoring it to its original form. So the way the code is written currently, line 19 through 20 wouldn't change. They would stay exactly the same. So there is no change or amendment to that we've made. This bill only affects line 19.
Or 21, correct? Are we reinserting line 21?
We are, that was an amendment we had, I'm sorry. Am I supposed to?
Megan.
Mr. Chairman,
Thank
I'm
you,
just trying
Mr.
to make
Chairman.
sure
I apologize.
understand exactly what we're doing.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. What the amendment does is from line 19 through on line 20 after meeting. It's the only change that's being made is from the word meetings to meeting. By reinserting by audio or visual means, you're returning the language to the way that it currently reads in the code.
So will this or will not, Mr. Chairman, if I may?
Continue.
Back to you, amigo. Again, I'm trying to better understand this. Will this or will this not allow them to record the meeting and share those recordings with those who are out of the country, unable to attend, or in a form that they cannot attend? So if they're in the hospital or if they're bedridden or something like that?
Well, Mr. Chairman, that language was not reinserted, and that begins after the stricken visual means on line 20.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, if that's the case, if we're not putting that back in, my concern with this is we're eliminating the right of a lot owner to record the proceedings and then share that with those who cannot be there. And again, in Virginia Beach, in my community, we have a lot of military members. In 3 of the condo associations that I'm familiar with, a majority of the owners are military, and they record the meetings and they share them, the secretary shares them with the military members who are deployed so they can get back to them on whether they support something or not. We also have one where a lot of folks are elderly, and I really think it's bad policy if we're not going to allow that, and again, these were my original concerns, but with one of our other senators, he had some concerns with this as well. But my concern is we are disenfranchising individuals who are deployed. We're taking an ability to provide these meetings and the minutes of these meetings so those who can't get there because they're elderly or they're bedridden, and we're now taking that away from them. And, with that, I certainly can't support that. If we're not reinserting that section, then I'm going to move that we PBI this, because I don't think this is good policy to discriminate against our military or discriminate those who are aging.
Mr. Chair?
I recognized Senator McPike, or is it who? Are you yielding? Okay.
All right. Mr. Chair, if I'm reading and understanding what you're saying, right now people are able to share the proceedings. They can make the recording, and obviously there's no prohibition anywhere on sharing it with anybody. The language that to share is not in the current code. And so therefore, by going back to the current code, we are not imposing any restriction on sharing, if I'm reading this correctly. So that anybody, right now people share and they can continue to share without that language being in there. And it does provide an explicit right to be able to record, so that is covered there. So I think the concerns that Junior Senator from Virginia Beach had, I think are that the bill in its current form does not present problems which he was concerned about. So I think we're actually in pretty good shape.
Mr. Chair, may I?
Yes.
I agree with Senator DeStef that I think it's important and vital to share the videos. My husband works a night shift, and he isn't able to attend our HOA board meetings. And the sharing issue comes up often with HOAs and in my community, and being in real estate, it comes up in general in any house we sell. And I agree that it should explicitly be in there. That was my attempt in the beginning. And working with stakeholders and realizing that we needed to come back and look at this language later, along with 6 other HOA bills I had, and look at them holistically, we decided to table that idea and work on it later in the summertime and come back next year with it. But I agree 100% we should be able to share with people who cannot attend the meetings. It isn't explicitly there, and that's what I was attempting to do, and instead we made it easier.
Mr. Chairman. So, amigo, the italicized to share the recordings of such meeting with other lot was something she was trying to accomplish. We've now struck that back out. What's been restored is by audio or visual means. Is that correct? Correct. Okay, so by restoring the original language, does anything prevent somebody from sharing those?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There is nothing that I'm aware of that's in the Property Owners Association Act that would prevent sharing. Of course, if there are individual bylaws that may, for an individual development that may provide for that, I'm not aware of, but there's nothing in the Property Owners Association.
As part of their, Mr. Chairman, as part of their covenants or bylaws of the organization could prevent them from sharing. Is that what you're saying?
I think so, Mr. Senator Reeves.
Okay.
Lead to a question. Senator DeStef.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to take this by so I can actually sit down and go through this section of the code one more time. There's some concerns on this still, and I want to make sure we're not doing something that we don't realize what we're doing. So I'd like to take this by, please.
Excuse me? So you're withdrawing the other motion and?
I'll withdraw the other motion, and my motion will be to take it by for the day.
For the day. Okay. Is there a second?
So, Mr. Chairman, and so we meet again, what does that effectively do? I mean, if he's trying to kill the bill, then then make that motion. But if we can continue to work on it beyond today, I just want to make sure the committee is going to meet and we're going to have time if we take this by one more time to fully address it. The delegates sat here for 3.5 hours last week, so we essentially have taken this by for a week already.
Well, my goal was to try to get everything wrapped up today. We have the room next Monday, and so we can certainly have another meeting.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I would say let's make a good faith effort here to work on this, look at the code, make sure it satisfies the gentleman's requirements. I believe the delegate did go sit down with the senator in question in the last week, correct?
I did speak
Thank
with
you.
my senator,
And
yes.
so if we could keep this moving and several of us commit to working on it, iron out any legitimate details that we have, so that we don't just take it by and bury it in committee, I would move to report in that situation.
That would be a substitute motion.
I would substitute that motion.
Properly moved that the bill be reported, and that's properly seconded. Any more conversation?
Mr. Chair,
Senator Barker.
I would just note that if we do report this bill out, that certainly gives people a few days before we would get to third reading to be able to come up with any changes or floor amendments that they want to make at that time. So I think it allows us to keep things moving forward, but also allows time for reflection and anyone who wants to propose an amendment on the floor then.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Reeves.
I would concur with my colleague, Senator Barker, to Senator or Delegate Fowler, that your bill might have a little fever and you need to probably get with my colleague to my left to try to figure it out before floor amendments start coming up. So, Mr. Chairman, I would renew the motion that Senator Mason made to report.
Okay. Any more conversation? Is anyone here in opposition to House Bill 1041? All right. You've heard the motion. All in favor, record your votes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Ayes 14, noes 1.
Okay. All right. Delegate Aird, welcome.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Before you, you should have House Bill 1275. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, House Bill 1275 amends the code by reinstating an exemption under FOIA for the Virginia Department of Transportation's Assurance and Compliance Office for certain confidential and proprietary information that is provided by non-governmental entities as part of audits and special investigations and studies. Just to give you a little bit of brief background, when the Office of the State Inspector General was established in 2012 to investigate waste and identity inefficiencies in the executive branch of state government, legislation was created to change VDOT's FOIA exemption because it was assumed that under OSIG, they would then conduct, they would be primarily conducting their audits and special investigations. However, we're requesting this reinstatement because to date, VDOT is still conducting their own audits and special investigations, but because of their inability to protect confidential and proprietary information, some entities have refused to provide VDOT with their, the information that's being requested, which has impeded on their ability to complete their audits and sometimes other agency business. So at this time, we're asking for the code to be updated so that we can reinstate the exemption that they previously had.
Okay. Does everyone understand? Is there anyone here in opposition to House Bill 1275? Hearing none. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, oops, sorry. I was just going to say move to report this fine
right.
bill. This fixes a loophole where folks have been FOIAing information and then competing against their competitors, but using the information from the government. And this closes that loophole. It's a good bill.
Okay. Properly moved and seconded that House Bill 1275 be reported. Any further conversation? Hearing none. Record your votes.
Ayes 14, noes 1.
All right.
I thank the committee.
Delegate Hassel, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committees. I do apologize for you guys having to summon me here. I was tied up in another committee.
What, if you want to go back, we can just
No, yes, sir. I'm going back just as soon as I get finished. Thank you. House Bill 1412 has to do with mental health training for our firefighters and EMS people. They are running into more often situations where they have to deal with someone who has a mental issue going on, and there are certain ways that they have to address these things. They are quite frankly, some of the fire departments are already doing it across the state. This bill would require it for all firefighters and EMS personnel. There's no cost to them. They'd be doing it while they're on duty. Volunteers are exempted from that so that the folks that are out in the rural areas, even though they may somehow get the training, they won't have to drive long distances to take that training. No cost to employers, no cost to employees, just something that the fire service thinks and EMS folks thinks needs to be done to equip them properly for some of the cases they come upon.
Is anyone here in opposition to House Bill 1412? Hearing none.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I just had a question and a
Voice change.
concern. I was throwing my voice. So I guess my concern is that we have a lot of bills that are coming forward to address this issue. And it's basically, I think, the CIT training that we're doing for police in the field, and it's trauma-informed training, and I'm worried that we're defining it in different specific ways in different places in the code instead of coming up with a universal language that, you know, people who are in the field are going to have the same training for trauma-informed care of individuals they confront. And I guess that's my concern, is that you've been very prescriptive here in what they should be trained on, and I'm not sure that we shouldn't just leave this as trauma-informed or CIT training. And I would love to see what Senator McPike thinks.
Ruh-roh. Mr. Chairman, I'd answer the senator that CIT training, I believe, is a little bit more involved. There's a separate sort of curriculum involved with it. This is more of the dealing with the events and occurrence, almost like PTSD, in terms of the events that are seen and witnessed in the field, and how to address and get help is a lot of what the awareness levels training provides to first responders. So it is a little bit, while covering a similar area, is different in its approach.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, follow-up.
Continue.
So this is training for the firefighters to recognize their own mental health challenges or to deal with individuals they meet in the field?
Individuals
like
that they would meet on a call.
Okay, so that sounds like CIT training to me.
Mr. Chairman, line 14, if I may, it says training for its personnel, which shall include training regarding the following. So, and then I had a follow-up question from.
Yeah. Let's, Mr. Rhodes, you want to
Yes, sir.
comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ed Rhodes with the Virginia Association of Rescue Squads and Virginia Professional Firefighters. This is training for within so that we can recognize if there's an issue with each other in the station, not on the outside, but from within.
Does that answer your question?
It does. Mr. Chairman, I just have a follow-up then.
Okay.
This feels a little bit like an unfunded mandate. And where are the counties and the departments on the cost of this training?
I will say from the notes that I was given, that the employers could choose whatever class that they want to have for their personnel. It can be done on duty, so there's really no extra funding to pay for the fire personnel that are on. They don't have to bring them back on overtime. They're done. It's done within the station.
But there would be a cost of.
It depends on which organization teaches a class. On the EMS side of the bill, that is for the volunteer EMS providers. And Virginia Association of Rescue Squads has already put 2 people through an instructor trainer's course, and they are now teaching within the association probably as quick as they can get it turned around. It's 30 students per class, and we've got probably close to 13,000 members. So, but they can also do, you know, the career stations and elsewhere if need be. And they don't charge.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator McPike.
just as a follow-up to that, VDFP fire programs also has online modules as well to support that. They have an entire program of CEs in relation, I mean, as well as actually Office of EMS has some good ones as well that support it. It's been fairly well established for 15 to 20 years in terms of modules that cross fire programs and are shared fairly commonly in terms of curriculum. So I just offer that to the committee, that there are frameworks that exist out there that are essentially free and cost-effective. It gets down into the individual department's risk management and how they want to deal with critical incident stress debriefing and other things for their employees. So it's an employee-employee relationship. But the trend amongst the fire services between alcohol abuse, substance abuse, and suicide continues to rise, much like we see in the veteran service returning from overseas, which is why you see an increased awareness of this issue.
Mr. Chairman, one follow-up question. Thank you. I'm just looking at Senate Bill 670, which basically addresses, it went through Education and Health, it did not come through this committee, and we may need to redirect this bill to a similar location, but it essentially addresses the same issue in a much less prescriptive way. And I'm just thinking about code and redundancy and overlap in the number of words that we put into code, and I'm wondering if we should consider substituting the language of Senator Deed's Bill 670 instead of this prescriptive language. Wonder how the patron would feel about that.
Mr. Chairman, I think they answered one of my questions, but I'll ask it again. This does cover volunteer, all volunteer firefighters and EMS as well, correct?
Sir. It covers volunteer EMS.
But not volunteer firemen?
Not volunteer fire. They wanted to be exempt.
Okay. My second question, Mr. Chairman, is there's no enactment date by that they have to have this training done, so they can put it off forever, or how's that work?
Actually, Senator Reeves, the way this thing works, it's always spelled out in the code. The process is laid out. It basically says the same thing that I just read to you a few minutes ago. The training content certainly can be created in-house. Ed's already addressed that while on duty. There's no cost or concerns of an unfunded mandate. None of the stakeholders have brought that forward. Volunteers are exempted. Fire departments, as established in the code, it's a department of government, and while fire companies are volunteer organizations.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the delegate's answer to that, but that still doesn't say it in this code section. So is there a code section, amigo, maybe that says this has to be done by such and such a date?
I'm not aware of one.
No, Senator Reeves, this particular legislation doesn't have a date that the training has to be done, and I don't think that there's any overall provision that I'm aware of that speaks to it.
Mr. Chairman, follow-up question.
Senator Reeves.
All right, so I wasn't a fireman, I was a cop, and there were certain provisions within our training that we had to have certain satisfactory training done by, or we wouldn't hold our credentials as police officers through DCJS. And I'm just curious, and maybe my colleague from Prince William can answer this, but I would assume if we're putting it in code that there would have to be a time in which this was mandated training, because we're putting in the code so we want these people to have this, and it doesn't say may. I think this is not permissive. I think this is mandated, so I would assume, maybe I'm wrong, that it has to be done by a certain date, so firefighters and EMS are allowed to do that professionally. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Reeves, DCJS sets specific guidelines for police officers. We don't fall under DCJS other than partially with our fire marshals. We fall under the Department of Fire Programs and also the Office of Emergency Medical Services. And both of those are included as providing CEUs to both sides. But there hadn't been any mention of a date that it had to be done by. I mean, we can go back and chat about it some, but I think we can, we've got the Department of Fire Programs here. If you want to ask them.
Maybe they could step up and answer what I'm getting at. Maybe I'm not asking the right question. My question, Mr. Chairman, is that if you're adding this into the curriculum for firefighter one, or I don't even know the different titles that you all have for basic firefighter course, but this is part of that, or is this an option election type bill?
Option. It's not included in the, I don't think it's been included, has it?
Welcome. Sorry. Hi, I'm Mohammed Abamin. I'm with the Department of Fire Programs. The first thing I wanted to say is the governor's office and the administration does not have a position on this bill. So I'm just going to give you my perspective on from an agency perspective. So essentially, the mental health awareness, it's not going to be a requirement. But the agency has offered stress first aid last fall, which basically allows firefighters to just, take mental health awareness classes and they'll get a continual education credits. So it's not a requirement.
Thank you. That answers my question, Mr. Chairman. I was just trying to make sure. But speaking of the bill, Mr. Chairman, have someone who's gone through traumatic stress and all these other things from serving in law enforcement, I know my colleague from Prince Williams had this responding to fires, and I think anything we can do to allow members to self-police and peer counseling and those sort of things is a good thing. So I'm going to support the bill, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone else have any questions? Is there a motion? Well, it's...
Mr. Chairman, the bills are identical. I looked up the code sections. I mean, I think both bodies, and we've passed it out of both chambers. No disrespect to our friends in Ed Health who are on the committee.
Mr. Chairman, they're not listed as identical. They're listed as similar, but I would propose we substitute Senator Deeds for this bill because it's less prescriptive.
All right. Amigo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We just did a doc compare. It was a bill that we missed in our review, and according to the doc compare that we did to the two introduced bills, they are identical.
Okay.
And as I said, I want just to apologize that we didn't include it on the identical list.
Senator Donovan?
So, Mr. Chairman, what do we need to do to get them into conference?
If the House does not change the deeds bill, then we would not go to conference.
Mr. Chairman, question for council. Have they amended the deeds bill in the House? Because that's not the language that's in 670 as listed here.
Mr. Chairman, in looking at the legislative information system, there are no amendments on Senate Bill 670.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I'll just withdraw my concerns.
Okay. All right. Is there a motion?
Second.
Properly moved and seconded that House Bill 1412 be reported. Any further conversation? Hearing none, record your votes.
Ayes 15, no 0.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Thank you so much.
Amigo, does that complete? Okay. Thank you all, and we will not have to have a meeting next week.
Well done, Mr. Chair.